appreciate it. Thanks.
It is also an honor for me to present to you our next speaker, Professor Priti Saxena, Director of the Center of Postgraduate Legal Studies, former Dean, School for Legal Studies, its University, Bahasabeka Bhimrao Ambedkara University from India. Sorry for my pronunciation, but I hope Professor Priti Saxena is here.
Yeah.
And the floor is yours.
Thank you, and good evening to one and all. I'm very, very thankful to the University of Lomonosov Moscow State University and particularly Professor Yulia for giving me the opportunity to share my views. So in your words, Darastovoche. I'll be speaking on AI and SDG with reference to SDG goal number 5, that is gender equality and empowerment. I have divided my paper in 3 parts basically. The first, I'll be speaking a little bit on SDG, then second part will be on the gender, and the third part will be how AI is impacting the gender. And related to this is whether women participation in STEM, that is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, will make any difference for their empowerment or not. So first, as we all know, that the Sustainable Development Goals adopted by all United Nations member states in 2015, and they are supposed to be achieved by 2030. So there are 17 SDG, and that are designed as a blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all. These goals call for an action by all the countries, whether developed or developing, in a global partnership. And they recognize that ending poverty and other deprivations must go hand in hand with strategies that improve the health and education, strategies that improve the education of all, to reduce the inequality and encourage the economic growth also, and how to tackle the climate change and how to work for the preservation of the ocean and forests. So all these 17 goals can be seen in 3 dimensions, as the earlier speakers have already spoken on many of these agendas of the Sustainable Development Goals, but these goals can be widely divided in economic dimensions, in their social dimensions, and in their environmental dimensions. Now, when I'm talking about the SDG 5 that is related to the gender equality and empowerment, it is basically keeping in view of the social and economic dimensions, which is empowerment and the gender equality. Regarding this goal number 5, it is also important to read it with goal number 4, that is access to education, as well as goal number 10, which is reducing inequalities, and that is very, very important. Gender inequality many a times begins as soon as a girl born. In some countries, girls are still deprived of the access to healthcare or appropriate nutrition, and that is leading to the higher mortality rate. In India, a female child mortality rate is declining at a moderating rate. It was 218.6 deaths per 1,000 live births in 1970, and in 2019, it is 34.9 deaths per 1,000. However, during adolescence, gender disparities widens. And boys, you see in India, they enjoy privileges in the society being men, while girls suffer restrictions reserved for the women. Boys have the autonomy, mobility, opportunity, and power over the girls' sexual and reproductive lives. Girls are systematically deprived of these assets. And child marriage affects girls more than boys in India. In India, you see, it is estimated to have over 24 million girl child brides. And over the past 15 years, child marriages have declined by just 11%. It is less than 1% per year, you see. So there was an article published in The Wire, that is in 2021, April, online, where an RTI application was, a right to information application was forwarded to the ministry in India, Women and Child Development. And that revealed that during the lockdown period only, between the months of June to October, 3-4 months in 2020, there had been an increase of more than 33% of the number of child marriages as compared to 2019. So the month of August alone witnessed an increase of more than 88% child marriages. So marrying young can have an impact on education. Girls face the obstacles in entering both primary and secondary schools, and which becomes a lack of access to skills and limited opportunities in the labor market also. To create virtual learning platforms permitting the use of varied teaching methodologies that adapt the individuals, learners that need, that is also endowed with intelligent tutoring system, and to offer education opportunities not only for the people with limited availability for physical on-site learning, but also for disadvantaged group and women in least developed countries would be a boon. So when we talk about the AI, then in that respect, we see that the girl childs who are not allowed to enter to a school or who are dropping from their schools, that is the position in India, this technology would be a great help. Furthermore, as per one of the report by UNICEF, we see that there are 18 countries where husbands can legally prohibit their wives from working. In 49 countries, there is no laws to protect the women from domestic violence. In 39 countries, the inheritance rights for daughter are unequal and they are not getting equal rights with that of the son's right to inherit. This is a matter of right to life, along with the fundamental human rights to economic necessity and an essential element in the social justice. This situation brings gender inequality to the forefront of the UN's 2030 agenda. We all know that internationally we have the Bible for women, that is the CEDAW. There shall not be any discrimination. And when we talk of our country, that is India, then we have the Constitution as the supreme law of the land, and we have the right to equality as a fundamental right. So in that respect, when we talk about the gender inequality and how to achieve the equality, that becomes very important. And AI can be employed to detect behaviors that violate equality principles. An obvious scenario of application in this sense, this is social media, whose possibilities for anonymity trigger many individuals to cause intentional offense against other individuals or the communities. The use of natural language processing methods can help recognizing inadequate forms of communication, such as hate or extremist speech, making it possible to identify the offenders. So gender equality and empowerment is more than a goal in itself. It's a prerequisite for meeting the challenges of reducing poverty, also promoting sustainable development and building the good governance. It's a key to ensure that no one is left behind if there would be gender equality. So to improve the lives of future generation in a sustainable way, this goal calls for an end to discrimination and violence against women and girls. It addresses the economic issues, seeking reforms that lead to equal right to the property, control over land, financial and inheritance resources. Then the question is how artificial intelligence technologies, now it is better known for the first, what is AI, as it was coined by and defined by John McCarthy as in the science and engineering of making machines that behave in ways that would be called intelligent if a human were behaving so. This connection among human and artificial intelligence is also expounded by Ted Mark, who says that this AI is a non-biological intelligence. So in that reference, how this artificial intelligence technologies can be better for the gender equality, how AI can play a central role in achieving the sustainable development goals, how to empower women through the use of new information and communication technologies, and what would be the essential strategy to achieve these goals. So artificial intelligence has, it can be a constructive as well as integrative element to social systems, to expand the democratic potential for women and girls, and to serve as a catalyst for positive empowerment. AI can create new opportunities, change perspectives. It can empower all women and girls around the world. Economic empowerment is the key to gender equality and gender justice. And digital technologies are altering the way in which people live their lives. And it is imperative for the women to be equal partners in developing the algorithms also, setting the research agendas and building the applications underpinned by data science and AI. So we see that AI aims at the automation of activities and those activities that are associated with human thinking, like learning, decision-making, natural language processing, and uses algorithms to mimic the human learning and cognition towards addressing narrowly specified tasks. And this is enabling the women for growth and new possibilities by detecting and eliminating gender bias and further automating or augmenting activities. In this perspective, equality is solely connected to gender. However, while contemplating the influence of AI, it is equally important to examine the problems of race, ethnicity, sexuality, and so on. There is a doubt, however, that the artificial intelligence, the ability of the computers and other machines to work intelligently without human intervention will transform the world in profound ways. We need to look into some of these studies that have demonstrated that some of the AI systems are showing signs of systematic bias, because the data used for training are already tainted with existing social or societal biases. There is a need to de-biasing procedure during data engineering. The transparency and diversity are key to keep the models to be as objective as possible. To reach to the unbiased results, decentralization procedure could be done across teams of varying culture, ethnic, racial, and gender background in the implementation of AI technologies. In this fourth industrial revolution era, AI should also serve as a catalyst for positive empowerment. So women too can speak up, raise their hands, and make themselves heard. We still have huge problems with gender inequality, but AI can be a way of identifying unfair bias in systems. As long as the data we feed the system which is unbiased, and if the AI application is trained on the data that is biased, the algorithm it develops will likely to be biased. So in a study available open access on the website, I've seen that Amazon found that an algorithm it had developed as a hiring tool was penalizing women. The data on which it was based had been called from 10 years of resume, mostly men's. The nations must look at the dangers that AI can pose to the diversity because of this data feeding and data mining. Nations like UK, France, and Australia, they are either drafting or they have passed the legislations to make the tech companies accountable for their algorithms. US Congress introduced legislation requiring companies to audit their machine learning systems for bias and discrimination and correct them. Other nations must also come forward, and India is also moving towards in this direction. Then for recruiting and hiring best talent at every level, the AI may be used to focus on the skills instead of emotions and connections to influence hiring decisions. Similarly, you see the use of text editing software, the mask age, employment history, photos, chatbots, or robot interviews, they can reduce the opportunity of bias. There are software that offer the benefit that can be lost in more subjective assessments, like it can evaluate candidates on such criteria as facial expressions, word choice, and logic, and thereby disalign the gender discrimination. For the promotion and retention also, AI can help in narrowing down the gender gap and retaining women talent also. Through AI, the internal workforce data in performance reviews and promotion and salary decision that can also be analyzed properly. At the same time, the women who are in the work, who are working women, the AI can also reduce the workload for those working women at the home front. Many women have to work for the home and family care responsibilities. Thereby, they are shouldering more and more disproportionate burden also. So that impedes their ability to give sufficient time in their career building, which demands more and more time. Alexa type tools are the examples of this technology, and it is potential, or we can say it can make potential impact also in future. AI could help reduce the burden of managing multiple interfaces, serving as interpreter and central coordinator of many apps and platforms that power a household. So these technologies may reduce the stresses of balancing home and work responsibilities at the same time. AI can also make life easy for women to claim and stay in challenging and demanding roles, and that may have the leadership potential as such. However, we should also not forget that in the coming years, AI will unsettle many employment patterns, rather I should say, on a large scale. So women need to take advantage of the opportunities. They should develop the skills which may be required in the new job patterns and career for their future. So we need to that the opportunity should be made available for women for their skilling, reskilling, upskilling in this field. Focused efforts are needed to ensure that women, the benefits of AI outweighs the threat of losing opportunities. And for that, education of the women must be emphasized. And they should be encouraged to take up the STEM, the science, technology, and the subjects, and their IT roles are very important for making them empowered. This is a long-run solution, ensuring a better equipped female generation, and who can make the transition into the AI-intensive jobs too. We see that AI is having the joint or a mixed impact on the women or gender equality as well as the empowerment of the women. So more and more what we see is that the AI is more for the empowering of the women rather than the inequality, because the only thing is that the bias, which is through the data feeding, that is required to be ensured that the proper data has to be fed while using the technology. And finally, the technology should be developed in such a manner that it is creative, it is compassionate, it is inclusive as well as participatory. And that can reduce the inequalities to bring the gender equality and empower the women. Only in this way, I could see that the AI can support to achieve the SDG Agenda 2030, and particularly agenda number 5, that is related to the gender equality and gender empowerment. Because if the women is empowered, the nation would be empowered. And as we see in our country, India, that a right to equality is made available to the women, and there is gender equality in papers, but that has to be applied, that has to be translated into practice also from the very beginning, because these technologies which are being used, they must be used in a positive manner, and the results will also be positive. With these words, I would like to thank once again to the organizers, Professor Julia, for giving me the opportunity to share my views on gender equality and empowerment in this international online conference. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, dear Professor. It's so painful question, and thank you for raising these problems in all the world. It's very important. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Following